Hi everyone, welcome to Ship Talk. My name is Jared, co-founder of Lojistic, where we help companies better monitor, manage, and reduce their shipping costs. Today I'm joined by my colleague Brian to discuss some of the top misconceptions keeping shippers from a best-in-class carrier agreement. So Brian, what is the definition, first off, of a best-in-class carrier agreement?
The easiest way to define a best-in-class carrier agreement, Jared, would probably be to say that it's specific to your characteristics. So it's not the same pricing that your neighbor who might be shipping the same exact product out has. It's a completely customized pricing agreement based on your sole characteristics for your business and every package that goes out your door.
So if I understand you correctly, it's really achieving a top tier level of pricing based on your characteristics.
Yeah, that's a good way to define it. Yes.
And is this a level of pricing that you would say most shippers are able to get to or achieve on their own?
Some, but very few. Very few can get to that. But based on what we see coming through on a regular basis for the agreements and customers that we're reviewing, most customers are not within that what we would consider best in class for their characteristics.
Okay. What are some of the obstacles shippers are up against when it comes to carrier pricing?
Some of the ones that stick out would be things that customers don't necessarily understand within the data that sits behind every package move. You've got whether it's their invalid charges or valid charges, but there are a whole myriad or slew of surcharges that impact the final charge for any package. So without understanding basically everything that impacts the charge, you can have some issues trying to negotiate that best-in-class agreement. You really want to be able to understand the impact of everything that goes into that package, whether it's the dunnage that goes around the product, the size of your box, and then any invalid charges you're currently getting hit with. If you are, making sure you understand those as well, so you can bring all those up during the negotiation as well, and ultimately have that best-in-class agreement.
So it sounds like invalid charges, hidden fees. What are some of the other things, like buried costs?
Yeah, there's a lot of buried costs.
Rate increases.
The rate increases are huge as well. Things that usually come up at the end of the year, like the rate increases, and looking and understanding not just the service level rate increase, but also the surcharge rate increases and how those impact your supply chain and the cost.
And then on top of inconsistent pricing, there's obviously lots of negotiables. How many negotiables are there in any given carrier agreement?
Oh my gosh, if you consider all of the surcharges along with all the service levels, we're probably looking at anywhere from 30 to 40 different areas that you can actually negotiate in an actual agreement, from terms, language within the agreement,
minimum charges.
You're looking at, it's like I said, anywhere from 30 to 40 different charges that you can actually impact and negotiate.
Yeah, so there's a lot to consider.
Absolutely.
Obviously. Okay, so let's talk through some of the common misconceptions keeping most shippers from ever securing a best-in-class carrier agreement. Sure. So let's start with the first, which is, we can negotiate ourselves, or we negotiate ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Misconception.
Sure, I mean, you can. But in reality, if you own a house and you try to sell your house, are you selling your house on your own?
Of course not.
Yeah, you've got a realtor.
I'm going to hire a professional.
Right. You're going to hire someone that knows the market, and knows exactly what you can get and all that good stuff, right?
And does it every day.
Yeah, and does it day in, day out. That's what they do. They sell multiple houses weekly,
Yeah.
So yeah, you want a professional on your side, right? And the same with going to court. If you go to court, you going in on your own, or would it be better to have a lawyer next to you who knows the law?
You could go in on your own, but probably a more favorable outcome would be hiring an attorney.
Yes.
Right?
So
same with you can do your own taxes, but you hire a CPA because that's what they do day in and day out.
Yes, and the same goes with carrier rate negotiation. Sure, you can do it yourself, but why wouldn't you consider taking a look at someone like a Lojistic who can help you get that best-in-class agreement based on the fact that we know the market. We know what the market bears day in and day out. We know the market changes, and that market changes quickly. Especially this year, the market's changed, what's going on with the carrier pricing this year has really flip-flopped, and they're making changes at the beginning in March. They were making changes every week to new charges they were coming up with.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, essentially what we're saying is most often hiring an expert in their field will yield a more favorable outcome.
Yes.
Right? And there's absolutely no glory in negotiating a subpar carrier agreement on your own.
No.
Right? At the end of the day, if you want a best-in-class carrier pricing, you hire a professional.
Absolutely.
All right, so another common misconception we hear is we already have great rates. Heard that a lot.
All the time. And some do.
Some do.
Some do have great rates. Just not best in class, but they're great.
Sure. And it's interesting how many people believe they have great rates when in fact their rates are horrible.
Yeah, especially after we've analyzed everything and looked at everything that can be impacted, and we come back with them and say, a few things can be changed here, many things can be changed here, and we basically enlighten them on what we do and how we do it.
And nobody wants to believe they've negotiated something that's subpar.
Right.
Or that they're paying too much. But at the end of the day, it's great rates compared to what? Right?
Yeah.
Compared to the last agreement that you had,
Right.
Or what are you comparing that to
Right.
come to the conclusion that you have great rates?
Yeah, and most customers, obviously, that's what you're inclined to do is look at your current contract, see what the carrier and or carriers are they proposing, and comparing that to your current contract, which is usually going to be a little bit better than what you currently have in place. Sure. But what you want is to understand how much better can it be. And without knowing what else is out there, you're basically out there on your own.
How do you really know, right?
Right.
And without a unbiased third-party professional opinion, you really don't.
No, because the carriers will tell you, this is the best I've ever seen. This pricing that I'm giving you right now is the best that I've ever seen.
Sure.
And that might be the case, because maybe that's all the account manager's ever seen. But if you look at someone like a Lojistic, we see more than even the local account managers.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the carriers mystify carrier pricing for a reason.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, shippers don't have to be fooled. Most oftentimes, their rates can absolutely be improved.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so another misconception is we don't want to jeopardize our carrier relationship.
Right. Yeah, that one comes up quite a few times as well. And in reality, we don't necessarily want you to jeopardize that relationship either. But at the end of the day, the carrier is hired by you. They are ultimately one of your vendors. They are an important part and really turn into a partner of yours. But again, they are a vendor of yours, and you don't necessarily want to be paying 10, 20, 30% more than you have to. And if you think about it, if you found out that the carrier was charging you 20% more, what kind of relationship does that
how would
show,
you feel?
right? That's a one-sided
Yep.
relationship. You want to be charged fairly based on your characteristics, and you don't want to be overcharged. If you're being overcharged, that relationship that you think you have is actually being put in jeopardy by your carrier.
If you think about it, in what other industry is that a concern, right? In any other industry, if you believe that you're being overcharged, you are going to say something about it. Yet in the small parcel world, those who ship and rely on UPS and FedEx, there's almost this trepidation and fear in going to their carrier
Right.
and asking them for the pricing that they believe they deserve.
Right.
Why is that?
A lot of it has to do just with the fact that there's only two carriers, and a lot of customers are afraid that if, let's say, they've had a bad experience with the competitor, so let's say they're shipping with UPS and they had FedEx in the past and they've had a bad relationship, that basically they are so reliant on UPS and are afraid to go to FedEx that it really makes it to a point where they're so dependent on their current carrier that they are basically afraid to go to them and ask them for what they would consider best-in-class pricing.
So another misconception we hear oftentimes is that my current agreement hasn't expired.
Right. Yep. That's a big one too. And it doesn't really matter. Every contract has, unless there's early termination language in the agreement, but even with that, there's ways around it if you're just really trying to renegotiate the contract based on a certain surcharge or service level that you're trying to go after. It's not really a concern to us. You could have negotiated a contract 30 days ago, and if there's room in it, there's ways to open up the contract and renegotiate. I mean, a perfect example was right before the carriers this year changed the rule on additional handling. We had a customer who just signed a contract on Friday. The customer didn't know that the additional handling rule was changing. Basically on Monday, we called the carrier and we renegotiated the contract that the customer had just signed on Friday. So within 2 days, we opened up the contract again and started renegotiating the contract. It was about a $250,000 impact to the customer, that little change that they made to additional handling rules. So even in that case, a couple of days later, we were able to renegotiate the contract.
Sure. So what I hear you saying is you don't have to wait until your contract expires.
Absolutely
you can open up a negotiation with your current carrier whenever
time.
You want,
Yep.
At any time, for whatever reason.
For whatever reason.
Sure. Going back to something we talked about earlier, though, it's doing that with a plan.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to just do it without. There's got to be a specific reason, and there usually are specific reasons why you're doing that. But you can open up the contract at any point in time. So
another misconception that we hear is we can't use a third party. Love that one.
Yeah. No, that one comes up quite a few times as well. And in reality, why wouldn't you be able to? It's I think going back to the analogy of selling your house. Why wouldn't you? I think the biggest piece of that is the carrier says that to scare the customer to a point where the customer's afraid that there's an issue with bringing in a third party for help.
It sounds like a scare tactic.
Yeah, it really is just a scare tactic. The carriers don't want you to be able to get help from somebody who knows the market, who knows the business, who knows exactly what to look for and what buttons to push and which levers to pull.
Because the carriers know that if a company like Lojistic is involved, what happens?
The customer will end up having a best-in-class carrier agreement based on their specific characteristics.
Sure. So it sounds like that is just something the carriers use as a scare tactic in an effort to convince their clients that they aren't able to use a third party,
right.
Which is completely false.
Yes.
And the last thing we're going to discuss today is the I can't share my shipping data with you misconception.
Oh, yeah. Yep, absolutely. So with that one, I would say that's another scare tactic used by the carriers. Of course, the shipping data, it's not necessarily the carrier shipping data, it's your shipping data. It's your customer information, it's your ship to, ship from information, it's all of your information. So there's really no reason why you shouldn't be able to share it when it's your information.
Sure. And I mean, technically, that information, a lot of that information sits on the label of every package that is shipped out, right? So it's information that is not hidden. It is visible because there is a shipper address, a to and a from on every shipping label, and information that essentially ends up in a shipping invoice, correct?
Yeah. It's definitely not confidential information. Once that package leaves the warehouse, or basically once the package label is created, that information is not confidential because everyone is seeing that.
Sure. We're not talking about credit card information.
No, not at all.
Right? So yeah, at the end of the day, totally agree with you. It is a scare tactic. It's another way for the carriers to convince their customers that somebody like Lojistic is not allowed to be involved in an effort to help that particular shipper reduce their shipping costs.
Right.
So to wrap things up, Bri, what would you say is the antidote to poor carrier pricing?
I would say it's probably not letting the misconceptions get in the way of your negotiation. And if you need help, there's no reason why you shouldn't reach out and ask someone for help.
Well, thank you, Brian, for the insight, and thank you everyone for watching. For more information on how you can join the thousands of businesses currently using Lojistic to help monitor, manage, and reduce their shipping costs, please visit our website at www.lojistic.com where you can create a free account. Till next time, take care.